For almost 2 decades, the UK has had an anti-corruption champion to try to concentrate focus on this issue. When it was created in 2004, it was held by a cabinet minister, the Secretary of State for International Development. Since 2017, however, it has been held by a backbencher, the Conservative MP, John Penrose.
You're basically the sort of Jiminy Cricket sort of voice of conscience for a whole slew of different government departments trying to get them to do more in this area. And because it's something which I've cared about but didn't know nearly as much about then as I do now, I said yes. But that means that you have to get immersed in this and you have to understand more about it. And the thing I think which we tend to forget in the UK is that because we don't have some of the more egregious, public, obvious examples, policemen asking for bribes and that sort of thing, that doesn't happen here, thank goodness. We tend to be perhaps a little bit occasionally smug about it.
Penrose's parliamentary colleague Damien Hinds is the Home Office Minister now responsible for economic crime. He argues that, particularly in the last 4 years, the government has been taking stronger action.
We have been working on these matters for some time, and I think in many ways the Salisbury attacks were a really significant watershed. And there's been a lot of work since then, particularly on looking at corrupt elites in London and in the UK.
However, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there was still so much oligarch-owned property in the UK that the government was able to freeze hundreds of millions of pounds worth. I put it to John Penrose that this does rather suggest that Britain had failed to check the origin of money coming here in the past.
I think self-evidently that must be true, mustn't it?
If London has been providing a safe haven for stolen Russian wealth, that raises another question.
Do you think the UK shares responsibility for the fact that there is a kleptocratic regime in Russia for having helped create it?
No, I don't think so. I think that we, along with the rest of the world, have been guilty of making it too easy for crime lords as well as oligarchs. I mean, let's not forget there are plenty of drug runners in many, many other countries of the world. There are plenty of arms dealers in many, many other countries of the world. It's a mistake to just talk about Russia here. Many of those other sources of dirty money have got nothing to do with governments. They've got everything to do with organised crime. In common with the rest of the world, we need to bear down on the things that make it easy for Putin's regime to survive and prosper. And if we'd done that 10 years ago, it would have been better still. But none of us have got a time machine, so we can't go back in time. Everybody bears some responsibility for not dealing with this more broadly earlier, but that's where it starts and finishes.
That isn't good enough for the government's critics, who say it has been reluctant to act against oligarchs precisely because they have been so generous to the Conservative Party.
I just think that a significant part of the government's apathy on this is the millions of pounds that have come into the Conservative Party from Russian-linked donors.
Liam Byrne.
I am really worried about the Conservative Party now behaving like poodles on rubles. They have just not got a grip of the sheer volume of Russian money coming into their accounts, and I fear that is part and parcel of why they've been slow to act.
I don't think that's right or fair, not least because this problem's been around for decades.
John Penrose.
It was David Cameron who had the first, and I'm afraid to say so far the only, international anti-corruption conference, which happened in London in 2016. So successive governments, be they Labour, be they Coalition, be they Conservative, have grappled with this. I think, though, it's really important not to just say that any money coming from someone with a Russian-sounding name must be dodgy, because in fact there's an awful lot of people from Russia who are fleeing the Putin regime who are living here in the UK.
Tackling some British professionals' willingness to sell their services to anyone that can afford them would clearly be the work of years. Britain's position as butler to the world is so ingrained, in fact, that I wrote a whole book about it. But we will only drive dirty money out of our economy if politicians can maintain their focus on this kind of month-to-month, year-to-year grind when the announceable is long past and the headlines have moved on.
It's not a new problem, but it is genuinely an ongoing issue. I think that the answer is that we need to come back and look, whenever there's a public spending round, for example, we need to be asking questions about the police budgets and about the National Crime Agency's budget and about the Serious Fraud Office's budget and how they're spending it and have they got enough. So all those things are part of the essential but politically far less sexy grind that needs to happen in order to make sure that we get both the enforcement and the initial set of rules.